Hello, welcome to the Housing Sector Podcast, Episode 5. A slightly different format this time in that I'm having a conversation with Suz from SHAC. In this conversation, recorded earlier today, we talk about the upcoming election and how this is affecting the housing associations, the housing residents, and the whole sector. We talk about service charge abuse, and withholding service charge and the support that SHAC offer. We also talked about pickets that have been happening and upcoming events that you can take part of as a resident. It's great to see some of the stuff that SHAC are doing. They really are on the ground floor at the coalface, meeting with residents and providing that much needed support. They really are instrumental in bringing us all together where collectively we can be the voice that is not ignored. Look, if you can download I must apologise for the video. The video is a little bit shaky at the beginning, but the audio is all there. It was recorded via Zoom. You can download the audio from wherever you get your audio podcast, be it Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you download your podcast, we're there. If there's one that I've missed, please let me know and I'll make sure we're on there for next time. You can download the video and view the video on the YouTube channel or on the website directly yourself. If you have any questions that you'd like to put to myself or Suz, then please use the comments below or send them to ben@housingsector.co.uk. All the links that we mentioned will be in the description. They'll be in the QR codes or they'll be in the banner across the bottom. And if I miss any, please reach out to me and let me know and I'll share them with you. So without any further ado, here is myself and Suz talking earlier today.
Housing Sector Podcast, Episode 2. Suz Muna from SHAC.
Hello, Suz. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Housing Sector Podcast. It's very exciting, our 5th episode, and your support has been brilliant. So thank you very much indeed for that. And I'm hoping this can become something of a regular monthly sit down and chat, perhaps, where we can shoot the breeze and find out what's important and what matters. So thank you very much. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And thanks for having us. It's really important that, there are all these different ways of getting the message out, really, about this sector, which is a very misunderstood sector. And we're absolutely delighted to be joining you and will be in the future, I'm sure, as well.
Brilliant. Well, that's good to hear. So, look, everything seems to have been sort of blamed. I mean, I've got councillors, MPs, we're on holiday at the minute. We're not on holiday, we're waiting for the election. So everything seems to have sort of almost slowed down and stopped, and everyone's getting their manifestos together and everyone's out around the country. What are your thoughts of the general election and how is this going to affect housing?
Well, we've just had a look actually at all of the different manifesto offerings on housing, and we've put an article up on our website looking at 4 of them. So we looked at the Labour Party, obviously, because they are likely to form the next government. We looked at the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party as well, and the Conservative Party. So we were looking at across them. And to be honest, I think the offering is very, very poor on housing. I think what's also been really interesting has just been how little housing has featured in the debate in the mainstream media. I mean, when there was a thing where they were talking to young people and they talked to 2 different sets of young people, I think it was on Sky, and both of them put housing at the top of their list. And it was just kind of move on now, it's really a massive concern for people, but it's not being covered. And I think that's reflected in the manifestos. All of them are going to eliminate how homelessness by the end of the next parliament. How often have we heard that? That's been the aim of every manifesto probably published in the last 20 years, that they're going to eliminate homelessness. The Labour Party is, I think it's really disappointing considering that they are going to form the next government. What they're looking at, they won't even end right to buy, for example. Even with all the research which shows just how damaging and harmful right to buy is, they're not going to end it. What they're going to do is review it. And I think that's a lot of the fare of the Labour Party is we'll look into this, we'll review that, we'll have a consultation on the next thing. Very, very little by way of actual firm plans, and certainly nothing that is anywhere near radical enough to start to address some of the causes of the housing crisis. And really what they're fixated on, as the Tories are, to be honest, is about sort of building, and not necessarily even building for the cheapest rent form, which is obviously social rents, or one of the cheapest rent forms that you can get. So they're not even really concerned with that. It's just, how do we get more people onto the housing ladder? How do we make it a bit easier? We'll offer, lower mortgage rates and things like that. It's really this concern with home ownership rather than looking after people who are in rented accommodation.
And of course, that leads into the housing association's hands quite nicely because they've got this remit to build new homes. They get loads of grants. They get loads of everything. Away they go. Oh yeah, we're building new homes. When actually, what we're doing is neglecting our current homes and leaving some homes into
Yeah,
dilapidation. And the Parliament, whoever they may be, and I suspect you're right, it will be Labour. Um, they make this sort of devil's pact, don't they? Because we need new homes.
yeah,
You're going to build new homes, and if we come after you for the poor management of your current stock or your service charge abuse, then your fold go under, and then we're left with no one building us new homes who we can control. It's a horrible thing. And it's a worry, and I don't think anyone can quite solve it, and they're too afraid. And our MPs have said the same. Our councillors and MPs, well, we have spoken, we have done our bit, but you've not driven that change that's needed.
yeah, yeah. And Matthew Pennycook, who is the Labour Party housing lead, certainly or has been, a shadow sort of housing lead. He is very much. We met with him a couple of times, and he's very, very much. Housing associations are part of the solution. I think you and I would agree. Housing associations are part of the problem. So, the starting point is very different to where we are. And he was also just laughed when we said about rent controls generally. Even in the private sector, we really need to see rent controls. And we were part of a really big coalition of groups that were saying this. Working on the ground, housing activists, and he literally just laughed in our faces, and totally dismissed it. It's not going to happen. So his starting point is very different to where we would want them to be. So we really do still have our work cut out. I would say that politicians can be moved, though. I am a
Yeah.
firm believer that we can actually move them if we put enough pressure on him, and which is why we're working with other groups and working with people like yourselves, really trying to bring about that change. So I don't want people to lose hope, but I do want people to be realistic about the sort of scale of battle that we've got ahead of us, really.
And of course, the ghastly thing is change happens when something horrible happens. So a disaster happens, a Grenfell, a
Yeah,
young Amber, and then the focus is back on it. And then politicians start getting tough and talking tough. So at that point, we can perhaps move them. Unfortunately, it always seems to me like we're waiting for the next disaster, which
yeah,
just isn't acceptable. Look, one
yeah.
of the things that we have talked about and is a big concern again, and it should be high up on the election talk, is a service charge and what now is being sort of classed as service charge abuse.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we have got a good story on this one, really, because I think the work that SHAC and lots of other, and by SHAC I don't mean just me sort of as secretary or anything. I mean all of our members who have really been agitating around this. The many groups out there of people just self-organizing on estates, quite often in isolation. So when we come across them, it's really brilliant that we get to meet them and we get to link up. So there's been a lot of agitation. Leaseholder groups obviously have been really critical on this as well. One of the things I think that people don't realise, and we have really struggled to get the media to take this message on, is that actually a lot of renters also pay service charges. So this isn't just an
Mm.
issue. They tend to focus on leaseholders. And Michael Gove obviously wanted the message to be, oh, don't worry, leasehold reform is down the road. That's going to sort out a lot of these problems. Well, first of all, leasehold reform won't sort out those problems, and secondly, it's not just leaseholders who are affected by it. But we are starting to see now a recognition that actually service charge abuse is a thing. It is something that is going on. And I was interviewed by BBC Look East, I think it was, and I was a bit worried about it because they had this. The format was that they would do a pre-recorded piece with me, and then they would put it to 3 electoral candidates. And I was a bit worried. I was thinking they could say anything, and I haven't got the right of reply here. But actually, it worked quite well. And whereas before, whenever, and we'd been meeting with MPs for over a period of months before, since April, really, we'd been having meetings with MPs, and it was still very much, sort of, yes, on the whole, this system works okay, but there are these isolated, and of course, it's really terrible for the people affected, but they are isolated incidents. And when they showed our piece to these three candidates, every single one of them started off saying, yes, we know that there is a problem with service charges. And I think that is the direct result of the agitation that we've been doing, like I say, that others have been doing, that leaseholder groups have been doing. So I think that message is starting to get through, but we have to press it home after the election. Know, we are still seeing far too many, service charge increases that are in the hundreds
Mhm,
of percentage points. Whose salary is going up
mhm.
by a few 100% to cover this. It's driving people more and more into debt. Just people are robbing Peter to pay Paul to pay these massive increases. What we would like to see is really a much greater level of confidence for people withholding payment. I mean, that's obviously something that SHAC has supported. It's a very controversial tactic. We do get criticised sometimes. We get told we're irresponsible by supporting people to do this. But what we do is teach people, show people how they can do it as safely as possible, and also by bringing them in as part of a collective, we think that that gives them a level of protection as well. They're not. It's easy to pick off the individuals when everybody is atomized. When they're part of a collective, it can be any collective, whether it's groups of other tenants and residents, or part of the SHAC collective, or any other really. It becomes much harder for the landlord to start taking any kind of legal action against them. So we believe that there are ways to fight back against this to really force the issue. Because why should people pay something? Why should they pay a charge for a concierge when they haven't got a concierge? Why should they pay a charge for lift maintenance when they
Yeah,
live in a street property, and there's no lift?
yeah.
And that is literally the level of abuse that we are seeing.
Well, I see it on the ground floor. We pay a service charge, and you pay a charge, you expect the service. And nine
Yeah,
times out of 10, we just don't get it. And you think, well, hang on a minute. If this was Vodafone, I'd cancel my contract, walk away. But
exactly.
we're trapped in this. And look, I will put up a link to I'll put it up over here or there, to your workshop website for the support that you're offering to people with service charge. Because look, I having been through the legal mill and still going through it, it is designed to be intimidating, and this
Yes.
is what the housing associations are hoping for, that most people will just buckle and give in. But collectively, we can and then collectively, of course, it becomes newsworthy. And then once it's newsworthy, politicians
Mm.
have to get off the fence and start joining in and saying, "No, you're right." Okay, well, look, that's great. So, do you know of anyone who's been into court yet over not paying their service charge?
No, no, we haven't had any members who have been taken to court. So none of our members have been taken to court just on the issue of service charges. So there obviously are people who have been taken to court by their landlord, but there's always been other stuff going on. Nobody who it's just because they've been on what we would call a service charge strike.
Right.
Some people are withholding part of their rent. Some people are withholding part of their service charge, or all of their rents, or all of their service charges. So there's many different kind of forms. It's not got a critical mass yet, so we don't have the kind of numbers involved that really threatens them economically. But I think landlords are very worried about that, and I think that's why they've been very hands off with them legally, even though all the legal protections are on the landlord side. They haven't actually heavily kind of pursued people in court over their service charges. They've threatened to do it.
Hmm.
They've written to them saying we could take you to court, but they've not actually gone through with it. And if they did, and the tenant or resident let us know that this was happening, we would come in behind them. We would support them. We'd appeal to the trade union movement. We'd appeal to other parts of the housing movement that we built, really strong coalitions with. So we wouldn't be leaving somebody just on their own to fight this battle when they've done this. We do lay out what the risks are as well, so that people know. We want people, if they are doing it, to be completely their decision, based on their kind of comfort level, in terms of what risks they're comfortable carrying. But of course, there's a risk with just continuing to pay these ever increasing charges. And the risk is that you lose your home because you can't
Yeah.
afford to stay there. And we have known people who have quit their homes, literally gone to live in their cars because they can't afford the service charges. They can afford the rents even, but they can't afford the service charges. So people are being driven out of their homes anyway because of these rising charges. I mean, they're still quite few, but you know, it is
Yeah.
happening. Mostly people are just taking on more and more debt. And of course, that's just a deferring the problem later down the line, isn't it?
Yeah. And what would be your sort of top three bits of advice to someone who's thinking about withholding their service charge?
First of all, we would advise doing a kind of just as if you were taking sort of strike action industrially, is to write to your landlord, setting out exactly the areas where you have an issue with your service charges, where you don't believe that those service charges are legitimate at all, or if you believe that they are really overcharging for the service and it hasn't maybe been delivered or delivered in the way that they have said it has. So that's, you know, it's really important that we think to write to them in advance and say, we want these issues addressed. And if you don't, and maybe give them a month's notice and say that's when we will start withholding this amount of money, which equates to the services that we don't believe are legitimate. So that would be one of the things we would say. Write to them, including SHAC in that email, and your MP and your councillors, asking them to intervene. Certainly to build you know, a group. If there are other people on your estate that you know, build a group with them. So obviously if you're writing collectively with, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, we've known estates of 70 people that have done it. You know, it's much harder for the landlord to claim that this is just an individual issue. Then
Mm.
it is clearly an issue that is affecting the whole estate and everyone feels the same. And there's a big problem with it. If you want, you know, we can put an article on our website about it, which lots of groups have done, and even individuals when they've been withholding payments, saying why they're doing it. Sometimes we can get that into local or even national press as well. We've had some coverage in the national press of our members who have withheld payment. So, you know, all of those things help by, you know, by agitating, by making a bigger noise. It really helps protect you and get, you know, visibility for your issue. One of our members, for example, who has been doing brilliant work with council tenants in Lambeth, because it doesn't just affect housing associations, also affects social housing tenants in councils. You know, has just won a big victory there and really got a big splash in the news, even though they were requiring people to sign non-disclosure
Yeah.
agreements. So the landlords will try and shut down. They don't want people to know that you know, basically groups of tenants and residents are fighting back. And I know that's something you've suffered from as well, you know, the sort of cancel culture that they
There
that
is.
they do in reverse. Yeah.
The service charge that we shouldn't be paying for a service we're not receiving ends up going on wages for people who spin and go to award ceremonies and spend their time trying to stop people from being vocal, which just proves that we're the majority. You know, we
Yeah.
have the power. And I think when people are separated on their own in their home, unable to pay their bills, and this is something that's a hangover from generations ago, you know, debt's something to be ashamed of. I can't afford my bills. That's an ashamed, I must feel. So, I mean, once we start going, actually, no, this is unjust, unfair, and I'm not alone in this, then the
Yeah.
momentum builds. And that is the big fear. And that's why they go to such lengths to shut people like yourself and myself down. You know, I
Yeah.
can't believe the
Yeah.
actions that they go to keep people quiet.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, your point around kind of you know, what you would do if it was your Vodafone contract or something like that. I think that is a really important point about, you know, you're described as a consumer
Mm,
by these housing associations. They love to use this word consumer when we meet with executives. You know, well, our consumers, our clients. You know, and we aren't in any real sense. You know, people who are in housing association properties don't have those choices. You can change your job more easily. You can change your kid's school. You can change, you know, your Vodafone contract or your Sky contract. It's you to change your home is a really massive issue, and some people just don't have any choice at all. You know, given their circumstances. And yet, if I went and bought on Amazon the cheapest item that I could find on Amazon, I'd have more protection doing
yeah.
that, buying something for maybe a couple of quid than I would for, you know, than I would as a housing association tenant or resident. who is paying thousands of pounds in service charges. Those protections just aren't there. And that's, I think you're absolutely right to point to that, because I think that is a really, a really big issue. In Spain, I think it is, they have a system where if you have a dispute over your service charges, you pay the money to the courts. So the landlord doesn't get it. So it's in the interest of both parties to kind of come together and actually, reach some kind of resolution, and the court can then investigate whether the charges are legitimate. And we would really like to see that here, instead of you being forced to pay it to the landlord and then have the argument afterwards. I mean, you can't imagine that. It's like a phishing scam. Like you'd be required to pay the money to any phishing email that came through and then try and have the argument with the person to give it back. It's not going to work,
No,
is it? And that
no,
is
no.
the system we've got.
That prince I needed, I had to fund to transfer his money. Yeah, look, you've been striking this weekend. Not striking, picketing.
Because we've been doing some leafleting sessions. So throughout the summer, we're taking on some of the biggest landlords, going and leafleting maybe estates near their offices, going up to their head offices. This weekend we couldn't have had two more different head offices. So the first was L&Q, which is in Stratford, one of the poorest parts of London. We were up in the market, not the plush, Stratford Westfield. We went into the market and were there was just ordinary market stall holders, and we're leafleting around there, and obviously lots of people there who have got housing issues, a very poor part of London, and talking to people about their kind of housing issues. And then we went on from there to the Southern Housing Headquarters, which is based in Hatton Garden. A real contrast, right in the middle of all the diamond and jewelry shops, right in the middle of Hatton Garden. But even there, people were coming up to us and talking about their kind of housing problems that we were having. It is absolutely endemic, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
wherever you go, you are going to find people, even in the midst of plenty, which is what you've got in Hatton Garden. You are going to find people who are really struggling with their housing costs. All people from all sorts of backgrounds, that were talking to us. So really good to get out on the ground, and it feels like we don't have enough face-to-face contact with people. So it's really good to get out there and do that, meet other activists, talk to people about the issues that they're having. So if people look on the SHAC website and they look on the events page, they will be able to see the sort of schedule that we've got going over the summer. It doesn't have to be your landlord. Just come along to any that you can make. Come along to any of the protests. We're just giving out leaflets, talking to people. Really easy stuff, really. So, all welcome.
well, I will put a QR code up there so people can scan that on their phones, and there'll be something down the bottom here so people can find your events there. So, and where are you this weekend?
So this weekend we're doing Hyde and Clarion. So two different estates. We've got the address up. The one for Hyde is near quite a big Hyde estate, so we'll be sort of the plan is to leaflet that. Clarion is in More London, which is right near, the old kind of snail shell mayor's building that was there. So
Oh,
again,
yeah.
a very kind of plush offices, very prestigious address that Clarion has got. And we'll be outside there with our banner and our leaflets and our megaphone, no doubt.
Yeah.
And a few people coming along. So yeah.
And Clarion, whose residents have floods, rat infestations, and yet they're on the South Bank. Is that right?
That is it. That you've hit the nail on the head there. Yes, they make sure that they're not having to endure the kind of conditions that they put their tenants and residents through.
Yeah. Well, luckily they're quite close to Parliament should they ever be summoned to appear before them.
Let's hope.
Let's hope so. Yeah. Look, I think the more of us that come together, the louder we shout. They have to listen eventually. I think, unfortunately, for residents, and fortunately for housing associations, for too long now they've had it their own way, and there's been no
Mm.
pushback. And social media has been the big disruptor there. The fact that we can connect online, that you can reach out an audience, that I can do a podcast on an audience that's going to reach people, that has people talking and has people engaging and makes people realize they're not alone. And whilst associations are the customers at the heart of everything we do, it just isn't true, is it? It just isn't true. And while
Not
they're
at the moment.
No, and then they're still celebrating at awards, which always leaves a bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Fix what you're selling, make sure it's fair, then you can celebrate.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Look, it's been lovely
Yeah.
talking to you, Suz, and I hope we can do this again. I hope this will have you back, and I'll hopefully try and get down and see you on Saturday at Hyde or Clarion or
Yeah.
both.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's lovely to see you. Always lovely to speak to you, Ben. Always lovely to speak to like-minded people. Fantastic work that you're doing. So it's a real privilege to be linking up with you on this. So
No,
yeah,
thank
good
you.
luck with it, and we'll see
We
you on
really are in
Saturday.
it together. We really are. Thanks, Suz.
Okay. Take care now.
Okay, so there we are at the end of another podcast. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you especially to Suz, obviously, for her time, her input, and the ongoing dedicating work that she provides supporting residents of housing associations. If you would like to be part of a conversation like the one I've just had with Suz, then please let me know. It would be great to get some people from some housing associations. It'd be great to get that other side, that other perspective. So look, if you want to come on and have a friendly chat, we can do it over a cup of tea and a Zoom call. Please let me know, ben@housingsector.co.uk. If you're a resident and you'd like to air some grievances or bring some solutions or talk about some good that's happening, then please let me know. Again, you can reach out. We can have a conversation and we can have a cup of tea and a Zoom call and we can put it on the podcast. This is a platform for everyone, providers and residents. Let's build that bridge. We know that housing associations have a long journey to go as they are on this transformative journey to make things right. And we know there are lots of disgruntled residents out there, but we can't be too far apart. What we have to do is acknowledge the failings so we can fix them. We can't fix them while we're all denying they're out there. And this is just one of many platforms that people can do that. If you're a supplier and you've got a great bit of tech or something that you think can help benefit these housing associations and in turn the residents, please let me know. Let's get you on here. Let's have a chat. Anyway, housing sector is going to reach over 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. So thank you very much to everyone who has followed the housing sector on LinkedIn, has visited the website. The traffic's going out all the time, which is great. If you haven't yet followed, then please do. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. That really helps. If you can like, subscribe and share, brilliant. And remember, you can download the audio from all of your podcast platforms. And of course, it's all on the housing sector website. So look, this has been episode 5. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Suz, and see you in the next one. Cheerio.
Thank you for listening to the Housing Sector podcast. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and colleagues. Your support helps us continue to bring you the latest updates and discussions on housing issues. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow us on our social media sites for more content and updates.